I'd like to welcome everybody to the 13 May 2023 episode of the Victoria Electric Vehicle Association Zoom. Welcome. Glad you're all here today, especially on such a lovely day in Victoria. Gotta love that. Mother's Day weekend. Don't forget that if you all have mothers. Well, you all have mothers, but whatever. But anyway, don't forget it. We've got two speakers coming up today. This Wednesday coming up, we're doing the spring electric vehicle count here in Victoria, 0630 to 0900. And we'll we'll cover all the major routes into the city and add that to our incredibly scientific total of EVs coming in. 2021, it was a little over 1,000. 2022, we had 1,728, and we'll see what it is this year. And it's just it's kind of a feel-good thing and something we love to point out to people around the rest of the country, just like we do with flowers. So we probably still need people for that. So if you're interested in coming out for that, respond to the email, our email address, and we'll hook you up, get you a clicker, and afterwards going to meet at the Quality Foods there at Eagle Ridge, and we will do coffee on us. So it'll be a little fun. Don't forget, don't forget we always have swag for sale, our t-shirts, masks, and stickers, so you can show your love for Victoria EV. I want to talk about also thank the people who came out for our April event at the Cidery up in Saanich there. That was a fun little event. Kept it very social, very simple. They sold an awful lot of cider that day. About 55 plus of you showed up, so that was good fun. We're going to do another purely social event. And we're going to have everybody go out on Saturday, May 27th, and do the Pacific Marine Circle route. Clockwise, I believe, right, Jim?
Yes, through Souk, from Victoria through Souk.
Yeah, so keep your eyes out for the email on that, telling you what our rendezvous point is. Just going to keep it simple. Everybody show up at one place. We'll all start down the road. You can make reservations out in Renfrew for lunch or bring a picnic lunch, which is probably easiest. And we'll also do a stop probably in Cowichan Lake. So we've done this one before, twice now.
That's your campsite in Cowichan Lake, isn't it? Right?
Again, I don't know. I'm just driving to where I'm told. I'm not camping that prior to that. So anyway.
And we'll do a time estimate once we know when we're starting, and you can join at any portion of it if you want to do part of it.
Yeah, there will be a short bio break between presenters, allows the second presenter to get teed up and people to go off, get another beverage or whatever is required. While the speakers are talking, put your questions down into the chat, and then we'll rack and stack them and ask them in the question period afterwards. So, make sure I've gone through my list here. Right on. Okay, two presenters today. First from BC Ferries and second from Fully Charged Vancouver. And we'll start off with BC Ferries first. We have Ed Hooper, who's the director of shipbuilding at BC Ferries. We've known they've got some really interesting, they're not all diesel fleet anymore. They have some LNG and they have some hybrids. So we'll let Ed talk about that, and then we'll take a break. So, and we're gonna cut off the mics during the presentation, and so that Ed can carry on without interruption. And Ed, here you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Glenn, and thanks to the Victoria EV Association for inviting BC Ferries to give a bit of an update. So today we want to talk about BC Ferries vessel electrification ambition. A couple comments just on the slide. When we talk about electrification, Glenn already mentioned that we have a couple of hybrid vessels, but really what we're talking about today, or what I would like to talk about, is our ambition to move to a fully electric vessel, or maybe a few vessels over the coming years, where we'll be able to recharge from the grid, just like many of you can do with your EVs. The other key word that I want to highlight here is ambition. So some of these ideas that I'm going to talk about coming up are covered by plans that BC Ferries has. Some of them are still things that we're talking about in the what if kind of context, and some of this is personal opinion that I'm going to give you as well. So the disclaimer up front is that not everything I am going to say today is fully endorsed BC Ferries policy. But I think I'm on safe ground to talk about these things that we want to talk about. As Glenn mentioned, I'm my official job is Executive Director Ship Building, which means I'm responsible for all of the new construction of new ships that get built for BC Ferries. But a part of my job also is to oversee our further vessel electrification program. So I'll start with just a quick introduction on BC Ferries. I expect that everyone who lives anywhere remotely close to Victoria is familiar with BC Ferries. We are, in fact, one of the larger ferry operators in the world, and there's a few statistics on the slide. We're operating 39 vessels now, ranging in size from those that you can see here, which are the Spirit of BC and the Spirit of Vancouver Island, about to pass each other in active pass. And then we have right down to some very small ones, such as that runs between maybe Mill Bay across the inlet there, the Klitza. So if you can go online and you can Google BC Ferries Clean Futures Plan, you can actually find this document. So I said some of what we're doing is actually plans, and we do have a plan to reduce the carbon emissions or carbon footprint as a fleet. So you can read it. It's still fairly high level. It's fairly aspirational. And it focuses on 5 things that we can do to really make improvements in how we reduce our carbon footprint. But one of those things is electrification. And again, in the context of vessel electrification, we're talking more about how we can draw energy from the grid, from clean BC hydro electricity to fuel our vessels. Let's start by looking at the Island class vessels. So you can see here a picture of Island Aurora, one of the 6 Island class ships that we have and that have come into service just in the last couple of years. So BC Ferries has just gone through a phase of building these 6 ships. The first 2, Island Discovery, Island Aurora, they were built sort of in 2018, 2019, and they entered service in 2020. And they worked pretty well. So we ordered 4 more of those, which we built really during the pandemic. The last 4 vessels, Island Nogales, Coluta, Quiguis, and Guaris, all kind of were delivered in 2022, and they came into service later in 22 and in 23. You may have seen them. They don't sail out of Victoria, but they were in Point Hope when they were originally delivered. So you saw these maybe downtown Victoria at one point, and then now on runs up and down the coast. So these were our first real experience going with a sort of a diesel battery hybrid configuration. So they have 2 diesel engines on board that provide all of the energy, but they also have an 800 kilowatt hour battery installed, which is designed primarily to enable us to run the engines at their most efficient condition all of the time. And we use them for what we call a peak shaving or a spinning reserve. So peak shaving, you can imagine, is just making sure that our engines run at a nice, steady, smooth RPM all of the time. And spinning reserve means, we have a backup there that if the engine suddenly fails for any reason while the ship is underway, we can immediately draw power from the batteries to keep the propellers turning. Notice on the bottom bullet there that we have a phase 3 of these ships under consideration. Okay, so Island class electrification. We have a plan coming together, and what we need to do is seek approval from the BC Ferries Services Board, our board of directors, and the BC Ferries Commissioner, who's the government's representative who provides oversight of our plans. And what we want to do is start to electrify 4 of these vessels. So specifically, we want to look at 2 routes between Nanaimo and Gabriola Island, and then between Campbell River and Quadra Island. On each of those 2 routes, we're running 2 of these Island class vessels. So we want to convert them from their current diesel electric configuration to install more batteries and allow them to run as battery electric ships. We'd also have to do upgrades at the terminals. So we need to bring the grid to the berth where the ship comes in, and then we need to come up with some kind of a charging connection or a plug that would now allow us, basically after every crossing, we'd be able to plug in the ship while we load and unload the cars and the people, recharge the batteries, and then sail back the way we came. So the timeline for doing that is basically now until about 2026. So at the stage we're at now, I said we're seeking the approvals from the board. We'll be speaking with our board in June and again in August. We hope to get approval to proceed with this plan. I want to talk a little bit about the battery systems that we have on these ships. So, what we're showing here is really the idea that you can take a single cell, it's just a small lithium-ion battery, and we start to stack them up to create modules, and then we stack up the modules to create packs or racks, and then we add those packs up to create a system of batteries. And so that's how we start to build up the large energy storage that we need for the ships. So in the marine context, and specifically on the Island class, we're using a company called Corvus. So to show you what it's like, that's the cell. It's about the size of a computer keyboard, roughly speaking. And we don't actually see that when you look at the battery on the ship, because it's been built up into a module that looks something like this, which is maybe about the size of an old desktop computer. And then you put those into the rack to create the pack of batteries, and then we start to rack the packs together to create these battery modules. And in principle, these things are really infinitely expandable. So as many cells as you want, you can put them together, and as many racks as you can and create a system here. So as I mentioned, the Island class has got an 800 kilowatt hour battery already, but we want to increase that to about a 2000 kilowatt hour or 2 megawatt hour battery in order to be able to run those ships fully electric without having to run the diesels at all. One of the things we worry about on ships all the time is fires. And so this shows what the system looks like when all of the battery modules have been removed. You can see at the back, there's all of these small circles here. Each one of those is an extraction system. So if there's ever a fire inside the battery, or what we call a thermal runway, if the battery overheats and starts to catch fire, then all of the exhaust from that comes out through this tube you can see on the left-hand side and keeps everything completely safe. Everything is controlled by a module so that our chief engineers, who are keeping watch on the system all the time, can monitor the health of the battery system, look for bad cells, which would allow them to shut down a rack, or make sure that everything is charging and discharging properly. So that's the Island class. The reality we face with ships is they tend to draw a lot of energy. So it takes quite a bit of energy to move a heavy ship through the water. And the reality is that as great as the batteries are, diesel is readily available and it's very handy. So we could fill a ship with diesel once and then sail it for an entire week. Whereas a battery pack, the same energy content as the one jerry can of fuel that you can see here, really takes up about 1.5 tons of weight on the ship. And weight is important for us always, because it impacts the ship's design, it impacts the stability, it impacts the amount of cars we can carry. So we're really trying to struggle to find out how we can optimize our battery pack and compete with the real energy efficiencies of older fuel sources, more conventional fuel sources. But we're working on that. Okay, I want to talk now about our new major vessel project. So this is a project for ships that haven't been built yet, but we're looking at replacing some of our older vessels with newer ones. And that gives us an opportunity to consider whether it might be possible to do something really exciting and electrify those as well. So the general scope for the new major vessel, or the NMV, we have 6 legacy vessels, and you can see them here. And chances are many of you have been on board some of these ships. They service the main routes between Vancouver Island and Metro Vancouver, or maybe between North Vancouver and the Sunshine Coast. And they're all getting quite old and they're due for retirement. And our plan is to replace these 6 with, identical vessels. So we're going to design and build a new ship, and we're going to build probably 7 of them because we think the capacity requirements are such that we're going to need an extra ship to carry all of the commercial traffic and the vehicles that need to move around the South Coast. But we've set ourselves a strategic objective of having zero emissions vessels for these new ones. And you'll notice I've put zero emissions in quotes here because we haven't actually defined, or we hadn't initially defined, what does that mean? What does zero emissions mean to us? To kind of put this into perspective for BC Ferries, we on an annual basis, and I think this is our 2022 emissions here, the company is still putting out something above 300,000 tons of carbon or carbon equivalent every year. And in the grand scheme of things, that's not a huge amount when you consider the province's total greenhouse gas emissions. And in fact, even within the transport section, it's only about 1.2% of the total emissions. But it's still, 300,000 tons is a fairly large amount that's going into the atmosphere every year, and we'd like to reduce that. To look at that a little more discreetly, you can see here how we've broken that amount down by routes. And you can see, for example, that Route 1, which is our main route that goes between Tsawwassen and Schwartz Bay, just that route, just the ships on that route will account for 27% of the company's entire emissions over a year, right? And Route 30 will account for another 20%. Route 2 counts for another almost 20%, 17% here. And Route 3 is the other one that we're looking at. So when you add all of those up, the new major vessels will replace ships, which currently account for about 68% of our total company's carbon emissions. So coming back to what did we mean by zero emissions, when we sat down at the beginning of this project and we decided what strategic objectives we wanted to reach, it was pretty quick within BC Ferries, within the management side, that we decided we needed to pursue a zero emissions target. And then we had to figure out what that actually meant to us. So we needed a definition. We report our emissions according to the provincial standards. So we have to report every year how much greenhouse gas emissions we put. So we decided the least we should do is to reduce that amount on our baseline on the routes that we're operating by 75%. But we also look at, the way we report our energy use emissions, which we sometimes call the tank to wake emissions, as opposed to the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions, which would be from the well to wake, if that makes sense to people who understand the analogy there with ships. And so when we talk about zero emissions, we have to report energy use emissions, but corporately, we want to look at the full life cycle picture and make sure we're not just pushing out a zero emissions vessel while we're somehow creating a bunch of additional emissions by going to some weird fuel source that produces emissions to produce a clean fuel, if you know what I mean. So the company's looking at it from both ways, and we want to basically make a major reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions. This is a way that we can illustrate that. So this graph, what you can see at the left-hand side, at the left-hand column, those gray bars represent 100% of BC Ferries corporate emissions on any given year. And these green sections across the top represent the impact of different initiatives or different ideas that we have, and each one represents emissions that we would not produce, or a way to reduce these total emissions. And if we were to introduce the major vessels and operate them with the same fuel source that we're using now, that would be one of those green lines. However, if we can get that zero emissions major vessel as we've just defined it, you can see there's a very significant reduction that gets us much closer to a zero emissions future. Now, there's still some work that we would have to do on the rest of the fleet and our other operations, but I guess the message there is that if we don't achieve a zero emissions new major vessel, then we're never going to achieve a zero emissions operation. Okay, a couple more things for me. I think everyone's familiar with BC Ferries, but this shows the major routes that the major vessel is going to replace. So Route 1, Route 2, Route 3, and Route 30. And there's some statistics in this table that shows the approximate duration of a trip, a one-way trip on any of those routes. And if you assume that we spend about 30 minutes in the berth at each end, loading and unloading, you can see that a round trip from departure, say from Schwartz Bay to Tsawwassen, turn around, back to Schwartz Bay and ready to go again, would take about 4 hours. But that's just the time duration. What we have done now, we've done quite a bit of modeling with the new major vessel to see how much energy it would actually take to operate those round trip routes. So for example, on Route 1 between Tsawwassen and Swartz Bay, we have a distance that we have to cross of 50 nautical miles. And so we're going to need, we figure, at least 26 megawatt hours of energy consumed in order to move the ship on that route round trip. Or if you break it down in a one-way trip, it would be about half of that, obviously. So to put that all into context, we did a bit of Googling here to come up with some representative values. But a typical electric car, it depends on what the car is, but you might find a battery size of about 60 kilowatt hours, and with a weight of that battery of about 500 kilograms. And if you went to a level 3 charger, which is anything above 25 kilowatts, you can do a fast charge on that. Okay, so we need to do a fast charge, for example, on our fully electrified ships, because we don't want to change the length of time we have in the berth. We have to stay on our routes and our schedules, so we need fast charging. So if you look at, for example, the Island class, if we follow through with our ambitions, that battery size is going to grow to about 2,000 kilowatt hours. That's 40 tons of batteries on board the ship, which is fairly significant. The weight of the entire vessel is about 1,400 tons. And then in order to charge it quickly in that 10 minutes we have, we're looking at about 3,500 kilowatts as charge power. So that's a pretty high power charger. Now, if you look to the new major vessel, and note my disclaimer, that's just a sketch there. So the ship we actually build might look nothing like that. But that's a 170 meter vessel that's going to weigh over 10,000 tons. And to make those trips with those energies that we just talked about on the previous slide, we're going to need something like 60,000 kilowatt hours or maybe 70,000 kilowatt hours of installed battery to be able to do that as a fully electric vessel. And I mentioned we're going to have 7 vessels. So that's potentially, half a gigawatt hour of batteries that we're going to have to find and put on these ships. So Glenn mentioned at the beginning, I heard him say that in 2021, there was 1,000 EVs in Victoria. You counted 1,000 EVs. If you took all of the batteries of all of those EVs and you put them on one ship, would be about where we need to be. The charge power on that to do a fast charge in the 30 minutes we have alongside could be somewhere around 30 megawatts of charge power, which is significantly greater than the level 3 chargers that you need for your fast charging on the Tesla. So it just shows you the size and complexity become much more challenging. However, I think the encouraging thing for us, and what I find exciting about this program, is that we are thinking about it and we're talking about it, and we're talking with BC Hydro, and we're starting to do some really interesting studies to see just how feasible it might be. So I can't guarantee that we'll be able to do this, but I can tell you from BC Ferries' perspective, we're really going to look hard at trying to get this thing done and see what it's going to take to get there. So it should be an interesting time over the next 2 or 3 years while we really investigate this and see if there's anything we can do to solve the electrification problem. So I think that's the end of my slides. I'm going to stop there, and I'll see if there was any questions.
Oh, right on, Ed. That was great. Jim, you want to lead off with the questions we got online, and I'll fill in with some at the end.
Okay. Hang on a sec. Push the wrong button. First question is from Bruce. When will the Port McNeill to Sointula?
Sointula.
When will that ferry become full EV?
It also goes to Alert Bay.
Yeah, that's a good question. So that ship is the ship that's up there is one of the 6 Island class vessels that we have. So it has the same potential to be electrified, just as the ones that we're starting out with on the other 2 routes. The answer to when is a bit of an unknown, because it might be never, or it might be after we prove that the concept works on the first 2 routes. So 19 and 23, Route 19, Route 23 become electrified first. And if that works, then we can decide if we want to roll it out to the other routes where the Island class are. The problem with the Port McNeill, Swantula, Alert Bay route is that there's 3 berths and 1 ship. Whereas the other routes are 2 berths and 2 ships. And there's a fairly significant capital cost required to build those chargers. So the business case for doing it on the Swantula, Port McNeill, Alert Bay isn't there yet, but we've actually had some good discussions with the provincial government about maybe getting some funding, and maybe we can do something there. So I don't know the answer, but we are looking at it.
I was on the ship on Wednesday and the week before, and the ship obviously has all the power connectors there. Now, I think in Norway, they've got a couple of ferries running using the same Corvus Energy batteries. And they're using, so the Corvus Energy battery power system is well proven from what I've been able to see. And that's a local company, isn't it, Corvus Energy?
They were a local company. They started out in Vancouver. They moved to Norway because that's where all their customers are.
Right.
They still have a factory in Vancouver, but their head office is packed up and gone over to Bergen.
Great. Thank you.
All right, moving on from Eric. Does BC Ferries still have a prohibition on jump-starting EVs?
I don't know the answer to that question. Sorry, I'm looking at the ships that haven't been built yet, so I'm not entirely swept up on our operational procedures and policies.
And another question, which class of ships were built in Poland?
We did build ships in Poland before. BC Ferries built the Salish class ships. So those are slightly bigger vessels, or bigger than the Island class, smaller than what the majors will be. They were built in 2017. We built 3 between 2017 and about 2019. And then we built another one from about 2020 to 2022.
Okay. All I got in chat, so Glenn, over to you.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the Corvus batteries, and like we used to see with naval contracts, you let it out, and it's many years before it gets delivered, and by the time it's delivered, you've got some technical obsolescence happening. So the batteries you see from Corvus there, they look awfully heavy for not providing a whole lot of power. That's for sure. But I noticed they're also lithium ion. Is there any thought to following up for lithium iron phosphate to get both cheaper batteries? Batteries can abuse a little bit more, but may not have as much power density. Any thought to that going forward?
Yeah, there's a number of factors that are brought into play when we look at the battery chemistry, and I'm not the expert on this, so I won't go into the great details. I know there's at least 6 different battery chemistries that we've looked at, but the most important thing from a ship owner's perspective is to make sure that the battery solution we get has got what we call class approval, meaning it's been proven to be safe to put on a ship from an organization like Lloyd's Register or Bureau Veritas or one of those. I know Corvus has come up with some new product lines since we have installed the batteries that we have on our ships. So if we went to the major vessel ships, there's probably a better solution by the time those get built. And what we would be looking for is something that does have a greater power density, maybe a slightly different chemistry. But the technology does progress over time, and so we are somewhat optimistic, although not necessarily counting on the fact that there will be greater power density, lighter weight, and hopefully less expensive batteries by the time we're building our majors and by the time we're swapping out the batteries that we already have at the end of their life on the other ships.
Yeah, because there's some battery packs out there providing 3.9 megawatt and under 26 tons.
Yeah.
So
If you can, I don't speak for Corvus, but you can look on their website and you can see some of their product line. So we're using a product on the Island class that's called the Orca.
Yeah.
Corvus Orca. They have something there called the Corvus Blue Whale, which is, it's a step up. It's not an order of magnitude step up, but it's a step up in the amount of energy you can store in the same weight and volume of battery.
right. And the other thing I was thinking about was operations and maintenance. That's got to be something that BC Ferries is looking forward to. The more you electrify, the less you've got having oilers down there, and less you have all those many hours teardowns on diesels. And even if you do keep a diesel on board, you're running it at its happy place in the RPN range, and that means that diesel is running happier and requiring less maintenance, even though you're putting more hours on it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a couple of things on that, I suppose. Number one, we would keep the diesels on board. We'll need them for days when the power goes out, and there's usually a couple of days a year somewhere on the island when the grid is down somewhere because of a storm or whatever. So we still need to keep the traffic moving and keep essential supplies going. We also need the diesels for repositioning the ships. So the battery will get you just enough to get maybe from one side of your route to the other. But if you need to take it to a repair facility to get a propeller changed, you would need some way to get it there other than the battery. We've done some preliminary estimates on how much we could save for maintenance. So we do put a lot of maintenance into one of these big ships. It's millions of dollars every year on average to maintain a vessel. So we are eyeing the potential savings of having to do less maintenance on the internal combustion engines. But we also have to weigh that off against the fact that we probably have to swap out the battery pack every 10 years.
Which leads to my next question. Are there soft patches built into into your plans going forward so you can do those sort of upgrades?
Yeah, there absolutely are. There are soft patches in the ships that we have, and there will be soft patches in the ships that we build. And for those who are unfamiliar with the term, a soft patch is basically a section of the deck that you can unbolt and take away, so you have an opening to get down to the battery room below. But even with the soft patches, we're talking about whatever I said, hundreds of tons of batteries is going to have to be moved. It's not going to be a quick evolution when you want to swap out 60 megawatt hours of battery.
And related to this from the chat, will batteries be switchable as there are improvements in technology?
Yes, I think so. That has to be something that we design for. And to the extent possible, we always design our ships, regardless if it's batteries or engines or any piece of equipment, that we would be able to eventually replace it at the end of its life and put on something that is more, more efficient, effective, or better when those products become available. We've even looked at having swappable batteries. What if we put all the batteries into a sea container and we recharge it ashore, and then we drive the battery on board and we use that? So there's some other ideas that are still being considered. And as I said, we don't have our plans fixed, particularly for the major vessels, in any way yet. But it is an exciting time to be considering how to solve some of these problems.
Talking about driving them onto the ferries, a Finnish naval architect, and I spent a couple beer figuring out just how to do that for the island class. But you're going to need to cover all the parking areas at the ferry terminals and solar panels.
And
yeah, that's true.
And a question from me, Ed. This came in based on our newsletter this week. Do you know anything about why Norway is thinking of banning electric vehicles on their ferries?
I can't obviously speak for the Norwegian Road Authority, and I'm not sure that that's entirely correct. There is a fear at one point about fires in the batteries of cars on the deck of a vessel. There was a story in the news, I think it made international news a year or so ago, about a big fire on a roll-on, roll-off vessel carrying cars. And all of the cars caught fire, and then all the batteries and all of the cars caught fire, and the fire burned out of control. So that might be the driver behind why certain jurisdictions are nervous about putting electric vehicles on car decks. Having said that, the International Maritime Organization does a bunch of work to look at safety on car decks and provide some really good standards, guidelines, and in some cases regulations that countries like Canada have signed up to follow. And they've recently been able to demonstrate that a battery fire in a car is bad, but it's not necessarily more bad than a fire in a car that has an internal combustion engine and a tank full of gasoline.
Yeah, you're not chasing batteries that are running their way down into your ship on fire.
A car with a gas tank will burn faster and hotter, and then it will burn itself out. A car with a battery will generally burn longer and slower. And so it's all about, in either case, it's about fighting the fire and dealing with the consequences.
It's really interesting to note that the probably 1 or 2 gasoline car fires a day in North America, and the only ones that ever make the news is every couple of months an electric vehicle will catch fire. Now, I know there is a concerted movement on the internet of people making a good living working for the fossil fuel industry, amplifying these messages about electric cars being dangerous, because every single day they can delay the adoption of electric vehicles is another $1 billion for them. So it's absolutely in their best interest to fund all this FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I'm often wonder about some of these articles that you see, whether it isn't some guy in a basement someplace in front of a computer creating this information. And of course, the news media is so desperate for content, this stuff gets picked up and sent all around the world. So I don't really see it as anything to worry about personally.
Yeah, we had an experience here in Victoria. We do an annual thing called Eco Night, where we fill the Save on Foods arena with electric cars. And the first year, the fire marshal came along and said, well, we have to disconnect all the batteries. And we said, they're not gas cars. And the guy went, oh, well, then you're fine. So I don't know.
We are aware of a study that's being done by the European Union. It's called Lash Fire, LASH Fire. It's all one word, Lash Fire, and you can find it at lashfire.eu. And they recently did a demonstration when they basically set fire to 2 cars, one an electric vehicle and one standard gasoline, or maybe it was diesel fueled car. And they videoed it and they put it on the internet. So, if you want to, you can always find some useful and interesting things on the internet. And you can validate the sources, but this is one that was quite interesting to watch. So yeah, I'll just type it in the chat, lashfire.eu.
Yeah. Also, Ed, if people have additional questions for you, do you want to put in somewhere they can send them to you?
It's probably easiest, Glenn, if they send them to you, and then you know how to get a hold of me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that come along afterwards.
Alrighty. Are you passionate about electric vehicles and want to show off your support for a cleaner, greener future? Look no further than the Victoria Electric Vehicle Association. Our t-shirts and window decals are a perfect way to show your love for EVs. Plus, with our high-quality materials, you can proudly display your support for years to come. Any color you want, as long as it's black. Visit our website today to get your hands on some awesome EV swag. Join the movement for a cleaner future with the Victoria Electric Vehicle Association. Hey there! Do you love our planet and want to help reduce your carbon footprint? Then consider donating to the Victoria Electric Vehicle Association. We're a non-profit association dedicated to promoting the use of electric vehicles, solar power, and educating the public on their benefits. Your donation will help us continue to spread the word and make a positive impact on our environment. So, join the EV revolution and donate today.
How does one jumpstart an EV?
Well, it's just
the only
jumping
way-
the 12, just
Jump-starting
jumping to 12 volt.
Yeah, wait a minute. Jump-starting an EV is really important, because there's a friend of mine had a 2016 Nissan Leaf, and where he was parking it was a place he couldn't plug it in. So the Nissan Leaf uses the traction battery to charge the 12-volt battery. His 12-volt battery had reached the point where he had trouble getting the car to open, and we certainly couldn't charge the car until we put an auxiliary battery on his 12-volt battery, which woke up the charging device. Then we could plug in the Nissan Leaf and actually charge the traction battery. So that's how you jumpstart an EV. If the 12-volt battery's dead, you can't charge it.
Mhm.
And
The whole system is controlled by 12 volts.
yeah, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. The other thing
If-
most people don't realize,
Most of those things don't work at under like 9 volts, they just won't work. So if your 12-volt battery goes, and that's a common problem in electric vehicles because they put small 12-volt batteries in.
yeah. So one
It's
of our,
also a problem in modern gasoline-powered cars
Absolutely.
if they sit for a while because they're constantly on alert.
Yep.
Because you can walk up to it and it'll unlock the doors because you got a fob in your pocket. It's listening for that all the time. And
Yeah, so
all
what
those
happens-
systems are running and checking.
Yep.
So it's not just electric cars.
yeah, your 12-volt battery loses 1% of its charge every day. So after 30 days, it's lost 30% of its charge. After 50 days, it's lost 50% of its charge. And then you're getting into the territory where 12-volt batteries are not happy. So, and if you've got an electric car, one of our guys had a Kia Soul, the earlier Kia Souls, and he parked it at the airport and he went away for a couple of weeks. He came back. He couldn't get into the Kia Soul and he couldn't run the Kia Soul because the 12-volt battery hadn't been shut off during that time. It was listening for his key fob and it ran down to the point where he had to get the 12-volt battery somehow jump-started. So he used his key to get the door open and pop the hood and get somebody to jumpstart the 12-volt battery. And that's when he sold it and bought himself a Kia Niro.
Yeah, the car that's in my background there, I got it at a very cheap price because the battery was dead. But the 12-volt battery had run down. I put it on charge for an hour and I was able to start the car and drive it up and down my driveway. Couldn't stop because the brakes had no fluid in them. But I fixed that. So now I've got a car that costs $30,000 and at this point I've got about 10 into it.
All righty. Well, with that little banter, I guess everybody who needed to take a break has taken one.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
So,
And I did put in a direct question to you, but it was supposed to go to everybody for Ed. I wanted to know if there's any design on ferries that have solar panels on the ship.
yeah, I haven't seen any as yet,
Mhm,
but
'cause it's a fairly large,
uh,
anyway.
Solar panels.
I spend a little bit of time because of my background, looking at ships and encouraging. I've been trying to woo a naval architect, another one, to join our research team, and that so when I find all these interesting articles, he can compile them and maybe come up with what may or what may not work. You heard Ed talk about the International Maritime Organization, IMO, and they are they're like the ICAO for aircraft. They turn around and they say what you can and can't do. So back in 2020, they turned around and said, because shipping up to that point, primarily all the really big shipping, ran on bunker C fuel, which literally is the stuff at the bottom of the refinery tube, the stuff that you can't sell anywhere else. They would take that on and they would burn it in their ships, which is why, having like oil tankers and bulk carriers running their main engine in your ports was horrific. I mean, it makes two-stroke engines from the 70s on our motorcycles look clean. It was horrible. But they turned around and said, as of 2020, you couldn't build a ship and operate one on the planet that burned bunker C. Step one. Now the EU and a bunch of other places are starting to look at if you come into a port, you can't run, your diesels all the time. You can't run your main engine any longer than required, and all these sort of things start to leapfrog. And at some point, it's going to be that, inside territorial waters, 12 nautical miles, you can't burn whatever, and then it'll go out to 200 nautical miles. Their exclusive economic zone, you can't burn, and all these things will march forward and gradually eliminating internal combustion engine burning at sea. A lot of change has to happen, but the IMO is on it, and there's a lot of companies out there who are looking to make buck on it when it does happen, when the shift does come. Here's a really good point. A lot of every barrel of oil that is burned goes towards land transportation, cars and trucks. The more EVs you put on the road, the more ships that are running around the oceans transporting oil. 40% of all shipping at sea are oil tankers. So the more, this is why EVs are so brilliant. They get in there, they start to undermine that whole fossil fuel system, and it changes people's minds about everything. You know, that you might be able to say one day that the Nissan Leaf sank all the world's global tanker fleets.
You know,
Yay!
the other interesting statistic is clearly Port of Vancouver is now offering rebates, dockage rebates to cruise ships if they plug in to the shore power rather than running their generators on board the cruise ships. And it's a saw off, so they don't lose any money, they don't gain any money, but they don't put time on their onboard generators by plugging into the power. So it's a brilliant initiative of the Port of Vancouver, make the air cleaner.
Yeah, and the engineers like it too, because it's extra maintenance time they can have. Same thing for Victoria, by the way.
Well, I got a question for Jason right now, if I may.
Well, hang on. We'll tabernacle. Goodness.
Okay.
Sorry, we'll have to, blot that one out for our Quebecois people. Anyway, we're gonna roll into Jason's presentation now, and so Bruce, you put that question right into the chat, and we'll get that forward. So Jason Hurd, I won't say token Canadian on the fully charged team, or are you?
I'm boots on the ground. Yeah. So you call me whatever you
Canadian.
want. Yeah. I don't get offended.
Yeah. So the Essential Canadian on the fully charged team, which is running around the planet, 7 shows this year.
6 shows this year, 7 next.
Right. And of course, he's the boots on the ground for the show come September 8, 9, 10 down at Canada Place in Vancouver. Get your tickets because we'll all be there, I hope. But I'll let Jason take it from here. Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for taking some time on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. Probably one of the first ones that's this nice. So thanks, everyone. I'm gonna give you a little bit about myself, a little bit about the show, and then happy to answer any questions. But I'm still out doing awareness and community build and all sorts of different fun stuff. So I'll get into all that. But before I do, I do want to thank you. Provide a thank you to the association for once again including us in your Eco Night. Those of you not familiar, you guys reached out and we were able to get Robert Llewellyn to record a little greeting, and it was played up on the Jumbotron. And man, we just love stuff like that. Thank you so much for including us, and we're hoping to do some great things and push the EV movement even further and accelerate that rate through what we're doing with Fully Charged. But I'll jump right into it myself. I've been in events here in Vancouver for going on 30 years. Started with the Molson Indy Vancouver, kind of fell in love with all events, and from there chased a race over to Hawaii, came back, got out of automotive, and I started my own event. And it was people may be familiar. It's the design show here in Vancouver. It's now called IDS Vancouver. So I started that from scratch. So first year events are nothing new to me. Was able to build that up, and actually as I was building that event, I partnered with the Globe Foundation of Canada on an event called EPIC, the Sustainable Living Expo, and EPIC stood for Ethical, Progressive, Intelligent Consumer. That was back in 2010. It was way before its time. The availability of product was way down here. Costs were up here. It just hadn't reached the tipping point that's required for something like that, but really interesting and taught me a lot. I ended up selling the design show, working there. I went out on my own, did another event at the PNE Fairgrounds, 14 acres, 700 cars on site, 144 through an auction. And while I was doing that, I was exhibiting at the auto show. And I realized that the auto show was terrible at the time. And I got to experience it from the inside out. A year and a half later, I was running said auto show and was able to take it in a number of different and unique directions, and did that for over a course of 7 years, a little pandemic in the way, things like that. But in 2018, we actually set a Canadian record, and we did 2,867, I believe it was, EV test drives over a 5-day period. And it was amazing. We had great support regionally through Plug-in BC, it was everyone. It was an all hands on deck approach. And, just proved how far ahead our region is in the world, and really opened the eyes to the manufacturers. Obviously canceled the 100th anniversary event 2 weeks out from move-in. Devastating. We had a huge EV component that was being built, and the car world has changed since. I resigned from the auto show in early 22. I just didn't like the direction of a number of things. Nothing against them or what they're doing, but it wasn't for me anymore. And it was really interesting. The folks at the convention center said, "Have you heard of these guys?" And I had, but I hadn't reached out. And so this was fully charged. And I sent one email. We spoke once, and we were like, "This is a perfect fit." And since I've been on and having some fun with these guys. So fully charged. 2010, a gentleman by the name of Robert Llewellyn started the channel. He was transitioning out of TV, which basically means you don't have a job anymore. And he went and he was in shows Red Dwarf and their version of Junkyard Wars and a whole bunch of different things on automotive. He went to the folks at Top Gear and said, "We've got to do something on electrification and electric vehicles." And they said, "Nah, it's not really, what we see as the future for us." And he said, "Fine, bugger off. I'm doing it myself." And he started this fledgling channel, pirate kind of video recording. And fast forward to today, 1 million subscribers. They did 4.2 million views in September of 22 alone. It turned into a media powerhouse. They've got multiple channels now, including the Everything Electric channel. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. But social podcasts, all sorts of different things. So a clean energy and tech powerhouse. In 2017, Robert's partner, Dan Caesar, said, "We've got something here, we've got to take it live." And they held the first event in Silverstone over in the UK to great fanfare and tremendous support from the industry. Able to grow during the pandemic, make plans and start to implement those. And as Glenn mentioned, in this year, we're going to have 6 shows internationally. And those shows are 2 in the UK, 1 in Europe and Norway, 1 in Australia, San Diego, and us here in Vancouver. And people say, "Why Vancouver?" And it's a pretty easy answer for me, and it's BC Hydro. And they actually went out and sought fully charged and said, "Hey, we'd be a great opportunity here in this market." And some research was done, and some deals were signed, and hey, here we are in the greenest convention center in North America. So pretty exciting. The event itself is, they call it a festival of electrification over in the UK. I don't like that term because we're in a building. We're not as outside and that type of an event to be called a festival. But I was introduced at one point as this will be the center of the world for electrification in Canada in 2023. You got to unpack it a bit, but I really like it because it really talks about the overarching umbrella of everything electric and electrifying everything. And hashtag that the event uses is stop burning stuff. So it's all about not burning for your energy and finding solutions, whether it's wind, solar, battery, whatever the case may be, to stop burning. The show itself, we take the Convention Center West. We're outdoor, level 1, and 90,000 square feet down in the X halls. We have upstairs, we have a low-speed vehicle test drive. We're doing a 1-day commercial vehicle test drive. We have our micro machine test tracks. We have our e-bike test tracks, all taking place right out on the plaza. I have Volvo and a pop-out display out on the plaza. We have TransLink with their history of transportation and their electric trolley out there, doing a whole bunch of different things. So you're going to see activity everywhere you go throughout the site. Come into the building, go into the ballrooms. Hydro is doing a big installation as you walk through. That's all about the sensory and about how water turns into what you plug into the wall to get. So all about our great clean source of power. Come in through the ballrooms, beautiful views to the North Shore Mountains and the water. You can have a couple manufactured displays upstairs, but upstairs is much more of the chargers, the solar, the all sorts of that stuff. We have our home energy advice team there. That's sponsored by Van City, and you can come and meet one-on-one with an expert and talk about future-proofing your home, taking advantage of government rebates, planning for solar, how you can, now that you've got your EV, or which is usually the case, then, hey, how can I add in on the solar panels? How can I add on a battery system? How can I, so it's talk a lot about that, and that's one-on-one time you can book, and it's for businesses and homes and consumers. Throughout the rest, again, we have our zero carbon kitchen, which we're transitioning a little bit right now, but again, just more lifestyle that's involved with everything that's going on. We have our huge giga theater, and we have 2 theaters on site, and they're active with almost 50 panel presentations over the course of the event. And I've been to 2 events now, both San Diego and Farnborough over in the UK. I cannot believe the content that comes out of these. They're fantastic. The questions are amazing, and they're always packed. It's a huge thought leadership and that positioning, and really our experience around those 6 regions. Each region really delivers quite a different and unique perspective to electrification, and that kind of comes full circle through the hosts and we have 6 of our great channel hosts coming out to Vancouver for the show, including Robert, Dan, Imogen, Jack, a whole bunch of fun people. You go through down, we are on our next level. We're looking at last mile solutions for EV deliveries. We've partnered with an e-cargo bike conference. So that's going to be taking place on Saturday at the show. So all manner of e-cargo bikes, e-bikes. We talked about micro. So lots of fun there, and something that kind of opens doors up to a new opportunity for us. Down the big escalators, down into the halls. And this is where you're going to find the mainstay of the commercial vehicle OEMs. So we have our commercial vendors, so commercial vehicle zone. So you're going to have everything from, geez, the folks up north, Edison doing things right, to BYD. Looks like they're bringing up a semi. So we're really excited about that. We may even have the eCascadia. So we're getting some traction on that, and so we're quite excited. But that's going to be everything from like Bright Drop and Canoe right up, and the different solutions for that commercial side. Then the OEM EV side, you know, whether it's Hyundai, BMW, a whole bunch of great companies, and we're still working. We're working the phones. We're working real hard. The world of OEMs has kind of changed during this pandemic as the shift to electrification has happened. But with that change came a big shift in how and what events they do, and why and how. And so we're making it as attractive as we can. So down there, beyond the kind of that commercial zone, the other stage that's downstairs, past the OEMs, we actually have a brand new way of doing the EV test drives. And we have space for about 40 vehicles, 45, I think, and we're going to fill all of them. So we'll have a whole bunch of test drives available, but it's right inside the building. So each vehicle has its own stall. It's lined up north to south on the far west side of the building. And there's a double roadway that goes out a set of exit doors onto Lower Waterfront Road. And then you can go and do your test drive, come back into the building, and BC Hydro is even providing live charges. You could jump out and experience plugging right in. So we're not worried about weather. We're under the big lights. This is something new, kind of sexy and interesting that we're going to be able to bring as an introduction. It was really interesting to get all the approvals and everything for that, but it's something that's come together really well. So, you know, we're super excited with the way the community has embraced us. We're very excited. Anyone that, you know, knows British Columbia knows this is, if the time hasn't passed, this is now the right time in the right market for this event, for an event of this type. And we're seeing it blow up in all sorts of different ways. So whether it's our, you know, stronger focus on the B2B side on the Friday, or whether it's just the level of engagement for the different groups that when we speak to, new opportunities open every single day. And if I could clone myself, I would, so that we can put them all into place. But we're going to start off really strong in 2023 here and have a great future. We're really looking forward to this show. We appreciate the great support we have received to date, and know it'll continue, and look forward to hosting some of you in some capacity, working with you in some capacity, and having some fun, if not, and take in some of the experiences and events at the show. And let's take this to a new level for electrification in British Columbia and Canada, and continue the momentum that many of you have put years and years and years into building, and we're so appreciative of that, and want to respect and reflect that commitment that you've all made, and your energies. So that's me. That's the show. Tons that I leave out, of course, because there's just so much to talk about. But any questions, happy to answer them. And we're working hard to make it the best event it can be for Vancouver, for British Columbia and Canada.
That sounds amazing, Jason. That's a heck of a lot of work you personally had to put into it. I'm just trying to imagine how you walk up to the people at Canada Place and have an idea. You interested? That must have been interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, they're such good partners. I've worked with them for 20 odd years, and they see this as the new auto shows. If you do follow Fully Charged, they truly believe these are the new versions of what the auto shows are going to be, what they have to become. Not to say that those can't shift and become what they need to become as well, but right now, with the conversations, with how everyone's looking at this, these are the opportunities for the brands to make connections to the people that understand and are educated and want to be a part of that transition. And that number is growing, as we know here in British Columbia, daily. So exciting.
Right on. I think the stats for last year was there were 68 EVs sold in BC every day. So that's a good number. And
Yeah.
Victoria made 25% of all new cars sold last year were EVs. So yeah, this thing is underway. This big stone is rolling downhill and gathering speed. You probably can't tell us, but will there be any debuts at Vancouver?
I know of 2 so far, so I can't talk about them, but I'm hoping to be able to in the lead up. So we're actually going to have one of the OEMs I'm working with. We're actually going to have an event for people that have pre-ordered something that's going to be a Canadian, could even be a North American debut. And then I did just speak with another big group that are very, very forward, and it looks like we may have a Canadian for that as well. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes out as time progresses. And the days are gone of manufacturers saving them for a certain event, but when they can earmark it and it looks like it's about the time frame, we can usually make something happen. So we're going to be making a few things happen here, so it's exciting.
Right on. And,
no Cybertruck, sorry.
Sorry?
I said no Cybertruck, sorry.
Yeah, Cybertruck, Roadster, yeah, all those things. Yeah, we have a number of, or at least 2 companies here on Vancouver Island that have put in orders for Tesla semis, and man, it'd be nice to see one of the Tesla semis show up with the logos for those 2 companies on the side. That would be amazing. And if that isn't happening, let us know if we can help.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a tough one, just because when they get out, they go out and they're on and in and live. So scoring the BYD and the e-Cascadia are big. Tesla's a little tougher to talk to. They're not they're a wonderful company, but they march by their own beat, especially when it comes to events and different things like that.
Yeah, totally. Open up for anybody else who's got questions. Bruce, this is the time for your question now.
Well, I stuck it in the chat. So what do we got? People driving cars, people in traffic driving cars. What's the best billboard you can possibly have for people in traffic driving cars? The car ahead of them with a bumper sticker that says Fully Charged Live, September 8, 9, 10, and the email address, not the email, the website for Fully Charged Live. So if you could get bumper stickers ready as soon as possible, stick them on the people who are willing, like Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association. I can talk to people. I'd certainly put one on the back of my cars, because this is a great opportunity for any car that's driving in traffic for the person that has to see this and say, hey, what's with this all about? Right?
Yeah, cool idea. Thanks, Bruce. We used to call them things like rolling billboards.
Exactly.
They work and they do the job. So yeah, great idea. And I appreciate that. I actually had a great chat with Harry the other day. So working on a number of different fronts, and I got some good marching orders, and we're working on the Detroit and some other things. So going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, thank you. I'll talk to the team about that and see what they have.
Well, the other thought that ran through my mind is if you're looking for a place to put the Detroit, how about putting it down where 45 people an hour are going to show up to test drive an electric car?
Yeah, you know, there's a couple different things. We're talking about putting it right out front. So everyone passes by. There's a big event that goes on there for BC Hydro as well that's closed to the public, but important to get eyes on something like that where it won't be in the show. So for sure, different ideas that we're kicking around right now, though.
Yeah, because in 2012, it was upstairs where everybody walked by it. There was a couple of other cars sponsored by BC Hydro up there. So just some ideas.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
And
Yeah, we had the Detroit on Salt Spring, and it was amazing because we were driving it around on a field, bouncing all over the place. So to get some local dignitaries from Vancouver, or maybe a premier or something like that, in that car would be just amazing.
Yeah, we could get Hawken to put them in the the passenger seat and drive them in. Just to open the show with the Detroit Electric driving in.
Yeah, a great idea, you know, and we're doing a big press event the morning of, so there are a number of things that we can do around that front. So it's about logistics and being able to put it together. But again, as these vehicles can drive into the building, we do have access for it. That could happen. So another great idea.
Well, in 2013, I drove it out of the building, put it back on the trailer again. And the longest I've ever driven it was on the Sunshine Coast. And that was in the Coast Rod Run. That was 25 kilometers from downtown Sechelt to the Half Moon Bay Volunteer Fire Department. And we put new batteries in it. We just got to get some new tires on it. We got a $3,000 bill we got to pay. We get new tires on the thing so we can drive it places. So we're working on that right now.
Yeah, maybe Jason, do you have a connection for getting tires for the Detroit?
Great question. That would be probably my past life. Not a ton of companies. We are working on Michelin right now, but I don't know if they would have something of that vintage, let's call it. But hey, you never know. So I'd be happy to do that. I think the other thing we could do is we could take donations at the show for upkeep of that significant piece. So tons of different ideas that we can do. It's just a matter of putting them into place.
Yeah, there's only one company that makes the tires. It's in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Already found it. But yeah, your idea of a little bucket to put, I mean, when I discovered VicEVA is when they were in Burnaby at a pub as part of the show and shine. And I put $10 in a bucket and John Stonier took me for a ride in it. And the understanding was that $10 was going to go to redo the differential on the vehicle. So that's where it went to. So yeah, fundraising works like that.
You didn't want to convert it to hydrogen?
Well, we were thinking about methane, but none of us had enough gas.
Yeah, well, that was a few years ago. We've got more gas now.
Well,
All of us.
a few politicians would probably work well.
on that happy note.
And I sent a personal message to Jason. We should get you in front of the VicEVA group. We do a Tuesday and a Saturday night presentation, or to Saturday morning and a Tuesday night. I'll try if we can find time for that to happen.
Super.
Yeah, and Jason, as previously discussed, we're happy to help wherever we can. EV owners booth, co-manned with VicEVA. If Harry will ever give me a bloody call, we'll do that. And also available to work on the panels if that works as well.
Well, I'm the treasurer now and I'm a member of the board of directors, so I'll give you a call anytime. And the Emotive Group did the test drives the last auto show. So I don't know where they are, but Emotive was mostly EV Association members that turned up, right? So we're available as free labor just to try and make this happen.
Yeah, and we're working with Michael and the team at Plugin, so on a number of different things. So we'll see how that all plays out. It's I think that some of when we did a central reg at Auto Show, I think it's going to be done differently because in our new configuration, like Hyundai has their booth right backing onto the test drive, so they want to keep it all in their booth. So there's going to be some different formats on how things play out. It's going to be more probably suited to a large scale event, more how those work where they have outdoor displays. So we're still crossing all those bridges as we get to them.
Right on.
It sounds like this is going to be terrific. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've got my hotel already set up for downtown Vancouver, so I'll
Yeah, I
be
don't have that problem. I live here.
Well, good
I've
stuff. And you know, we'll continue to have the conversations. I know I'm doing a number of different things with different associations. People have reached out from Alberta to VicEVA. You folks, you know, it's been so wonderful, and we're doing our best to accommodate whatever you guys want to try to do too. We want to help add membership. We want to help add profile. So whether that's, you know, the Detroit on site, whether it's the Roadster, you know, that our other friends are doing. You know, we're looking at everything, and whatever, if you have any ideas or you want to do something, just approach me. I'm more than happy to try to put things together. I want everyone to win out of this. I want this to be one of these things where, you know, one of the things that I'm so pleased with is coming over to this industry, and everyone has that. Business is still business. Everyone needs to make money. We understand that, but everyone has this inherent, we have to do better, and we can do better if we do it together and we focus our attention. And it's so energizing. It's so positive. It makes you want to get onto that next meeting and find the next person that wants to jump on board and do good things too. So pretty fun, and I commend you all for carrying that banner and waving that flag. So good on you.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the Tesla Roadster owners of BC. Is there some kind of registry of those people?
I don't know. I would. Geez.
Well, you remember at the auto show, you used to have a day for Mustang owners, a day for this car owner, a day for that car owner.
Yeah, there is a Tesla club. So a gentleman by the name of Rich Tier,
No,
who's
he's
up
no
in the
longer the
interior.
president. Rich Tier is history.
Oh, is he?
He's history. Yeah.
Oh,
There's
okay.
no president now.
He was the one I was talking to, so I'll have to reestablish that connection. I think he mentioned to me that he was out as president, but he was still going to facilitate the connection to the group at the show. I'm not 100%.
We've got some new people, so I'll put you in touch with the new guys.
Cool, thanks, Chris.
Rich is no longer president.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, we'll get you the appropriate contact for that.
great. And actually, I'm planning to hear back from Tesla next week or the week after on their participation. So we're really hoping that they step up. It sounds really good right now, and it's interesting, the companies that are signing up and coming on board. It's the ones that the auto show was losing before they had to start losing things. So it's the ones that are trying to change the game and that are taking share from the big boys and the different groups that can't pivot as quickly. So really interesting to see from my perspective, I can tell you that.
I guess you're going to have an Aptera there, are you?
Yeah, we're doing our best to have a whole bunch of fun stuff. So the Aptera down in San Diego, man, I couldn't believe that thing. I couldn't believe the attention that was around it. Just wild. So I expect it to be here. We anticipate it to be here. Dan's been working on that. I don't handle all the international stuff. So especially with that being a San Diego, he's handling those. So you'll probably see some interesting things that you'll never have seen before here. We're working on bringing some MGs. We're working on bringing some BYDs. You could see a Neo, just some different things that probably aren't even on the radar to make it through Canada's regulations at this standpoint. But hopefully we get to see them and see what could be coming down the pipe.
Well, at least there'll be at least one Twizy. What's his name from Solo? Jerry Kroll's got a Twizy apparently.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for me. I'm not going to babble anymore.
Again, thank you, Jason. Thanks for coming out. And
Thanks for the time, folks. I appreciate it, and look forward to working with you in some capacity or just seeing you at the show.
Yeah, we'll definitely see us at the show at bare minimum. Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Have a great remainder to your meeting. I won't snoop here, and take care. Feel free to reach out anytime. You can find me online and Jason at Fully Charged Live, at fullycharged.live.
Great.
Hey, folks.
Thank you, Jason.
Nice to. Thanks, guys.
Well, I hope everybody got something out of those last two presenters.
I never cease to be amazed at what a great job you guys do at running a meeting. Fantastic.
Well, that's Jim. He
Reached out and got two very interesting people to talk. Ferries are extremely important to anybody who lives on Vancouver Island. So that was perfect person to talk, and getting Jason to come to the meeting was brilliant. The comment that he made that when you did your event at the stadium, the ice rink, and you had talked to him to get him to do something, and you got Robert Llewellyn on the Videotron, that was brilliant marketing from your standpoint. Really brilliant.
That's Jim.
Yeah. Well, Jim, congratulations to you. That was a very brilliant thing to do. Whichever.
Have we invoiced them for that yet? No.
Yeah, $1,000 a second, I think, is what we agreed on.
Well, good luck collecting that one. And anything you might get somebody to get a deal of getting into the show. No, but I think that show is going to be absolutely huge. I really do.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have to pay what he's worth to get him to do stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, we couldn't afford you guys. Nobody could afford. Well, I shut my mouth now because he'll raise his rate from 0 to 00.
Yeah,
We could actually probably kill the recording there, Jim.
yeah, I think so.
Actually, you can back it up.
I was almost tempted to ask if there was going to be any hydrogen